Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino. I'm so excited. We have a favorite of mine for years now, Lake Bell. She has a new audiobook out called Inside Voice, My Obsession with How We Sound. It's from Pushkin Industries. She's directed movies like In a World. She starred in one of my all-time favorite movies, It's Complicated, as well as Home Again, which I can't wait to ask you about. Lake Bell. Lake, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me and opening your ears and your hearts.
I'm excited to talk to you. And oddly enough, it felt apropos because earlier today, I went on my Instagram account and I got this message from someone, a DM, saying something about my own voice. And this whole audiobook that you have done, I haven't gotten a chance to finish it quite yet, but it's very extensive. And you've been someone who's been invested in voiceover work and the industry behind it. And it's very fascinating to me. But I got this message from someone who obviously had responded to the wrong thing. They thought they were responding to a friend, but they were responding directly to me. And it said something about my voice where it said something like, he sounds so much gayer than he looks. And it's not something I haven't heard before because as a gay man, I grew up, I would answer the phone and someone would say, think I was my mother, Linda. It's a self-consciousness that we deal with as gay men, but it fascinated me. And so I guess my first question is, when did you start getting fascinated by this? And do you have any thoughts about what I just said?
Okay. So first, let's just jump right in. Obviously I have a lifelong obsession. I say obviously because I've written and directed and starred and produced a movie called In a World, which is in and around the subject of voice. And not only from just sort of a kind of metaphysical point of view and like levels and sounds and accents and dialect, sure, that's fun. But then additionally, the film actually is kind of like a feminist manifesto as a Trojan horse in a way. But really, this book is an extension of that obsession and work. And it's the exact thing you just kind of brought up, which is there is this really interesting and kind of cultural, social veil on the sounds that we emit on an everyday basis in the form of communication, whether it's, in our work voice or our, sexy voice or our voice that we show up to at a family dinner. And do we code shift? Do we style shift? Which I have been corrected in my research. It's actually code shifting is really more in tune with language versus dialectical differences. So for instance, I have a whole chapter about the quote unquote gay voice. And is that real? What is that? Let's talk about that. What about those S's and that sibilance? And we come at it. I like to come at it from really a curiosity and also a place for safe conversation, because ultimately, our voice is something that we feel like kind of comes off a truck. It's like, well, it fell off the truck this way. But in actuality, it's a roadmap of, gosh, our whole lives, whether you smoked a lot in your teens and then quit and then started up again, does it add to the quality of your voice? Do I show up right now and do I lower an octave in order for you to take me seriously? When you go home and you go home for Thanksgiving, do you speak in the same way as you do with all of your girlfriends or guy friends, when you're out at the club or something, right? Do you feel more natural? Do you feel safer to kind of lean into a sound, And so I think, I relish in that. I mean, there was a poet that I spoke to called Sam Sachs, who has this beautiful poem called Lisp, and he is a proud gay man, and it was almost pathologized as a child for him, to get rid of, as it were, that lisp. And then, of course, he has embraced it, and it is a big part of not only his identity, but really the shape of his words and how he expresses himself. And that is a beautiful thing. And I highly recommend reading that poem Lisp, but you'll hear it in the book as well. And he reads it himself with such beauty. And then we sort of talk about it. So it's really, I hear you. And I think there's a sense of profiling that happens, like if if you're from the deep South, we talk about that and you sort of, you call up for an interview, or you're ordering a pizza, for Christ's sake, anything, where, you come up and you talk like that, or whatever it is. And someone's going to have, a cloak of opinions. Yeah. Yes. Whether you like it or not. And what about me? Do I sound like a square? I don't know. It can continue.
It was fascinating too, the way I internalized it, because I feel like I'm comfortable with my voice now. I've been doing this podcast for years and I edit it myself. So I hear myself. And at the beginning, I hated it, but now I sort of like it. But I noticed I got this DM and instantly I felt that teenage self coming through, and it was fascinating. And it's so interesting what you said just now about lowering the voice for confidence, because I also just saw Sherry Shepherd. Well, I love Sherry Shepherd. She's great. But she had said the advice Barbara Walters gave her was that when she's in meetings, she should lower her voice a couple octaves so that it exudes confidence. And she was saying it. And I was like, I don't know if that's really a good thing.
Well, you know what? I think that in the audiobook Inside Voice, available wherever audiobooks are sold, I really enjoyed this being kind of this postgrad student, and like getting a real college level course in this subject of why as women, especially, lower our voices to be, quote, taken seriously, right? Or to feel more intellectual, as it were. It sounds more male-like. And so it then kind of reverts back to kind of a gendered conversation. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. What are we doing? Like, can a woman just sound like a woman? Right. And don't some women just sound deeper voiced than others? And I would argue that, it does revert back to the listener a little bit. Like, what's up with society at large that we can't just have a woman who speaks a bit higher, and maybe my natural tone is probably a bit higher. This is more my natural pitch level, but I find myself feeling a little more comfortable in this lower range when I'm thinking. It helps me think. It helps me like crystallize thoughts in a more authentic way for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, Lake, don't judge yourself if that's how you want to be, and with my children, perhaps my tone is different, by the way, during a day, my tone with my children can change, it can go from like,
how old are your kids?
They're 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. She just turned 8. She would be so mortified that
how
I
dare
said
you?
7. I am sorry. But anyway, yeah, I wield my vocal tool quite a lot in my life, and I notice it in others. And I think you have a beautiful voice.
Thank you.
And, I think that we all imbue a lot of self-loathing when it comes to our sound. Like, oh, please don't play that VM back,
Right. It
or
goes
like,
back to that voicemail. And nowadays I feel like we don't have, I guess we record a voicemail for our cell phones, but I remember answering machines. You would listen to it over and over again when you would record your outgoing. And I remember my mom doing it over and over again. And I would say, Mom, you don't sound like that. Why are you putting on this voice for a answering machine?
So where are you from originally? Because you say mom versus
Cleveland.
Mom. Okay.
Cleveland,
Okay. So that's interesting. Ohio, kind of Midwest. You've got those vowels there.
I feel like a hard A, like cat. Mom.
Cat. Yeah. Mom. Yeah. Because of course I
Midwest.
say mom and cat, so it's like further back, but it's really interesting. It's like, again, I get to know a little bit about where you're from based off just your vowels, It's like, there's your roadmap.
And I'm so fascinated by the sexuality of it all. I had recently Colton Haynes, who's an actor on my on different shows, and he was saying that he had management recommend him dialect coaches because he's a gay man and he learned to lower his voice. And I guess it's so fucked up that happens, but it's so interesting to me, and it seems like it doesn't happen as much anymore. I
think that there is an affect, and I find the affectation that we're talking about, which is kind of like a sibilant S, if we're just clinical about it for a second, right. That is, by the way, it exists in other languages too, which is sort of terrific. And I'm kind of like impressed by the S. I'm like, wow, you're just, how great that you're broadcasting an entire, you're saying, hi, this is my sexual preference based off just the S sound. And I'm like, cool. You're telling me what community you want to be a part of, And I find that
that's interesting.
Yeah, like the gay men that I spoke to said, gosh, in high school, I didn't have it. And then I went to college and felt really confident in my sexuality and was able to sort of luxuriate in my S's and enjoy a more, a sound that sounded like the peers I wanted to play with, And I said, oh, gosh, I like that, because we also, I think that we don't have to look at it as a negative thing. It's a privilege to feel confident enough to do that. And really in the book, I try to lean into that because it can only live as an audiobook. It's a kaleidoscope of sounds. And, we get to enjoy, and I know you love a spot of pop culture, and we get to enjoy and relish in the sexy baby sound, which is of course,
wait.
Yes. Let's.
Okay. Have you seen this thing on the internet with Taylor Swift? You're involved in a little bit of a controversy, like Belle, because Taylor Swift recently came out with Sexy Baby. There's a lyric in her new single Antihero where she says, sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby and I'm a monster on the hill. And some people are attributing that to, there's a 30 Rock scene where there's a sexy baby thing. And then also in your movie, In a World, and in the press for that movie, also, you've talked about the sexy baby voice. So talk to me about that.
Well, yeah, sexy baby, the sexy baby sound is something that came from In a World. Just so I don't know if she's referring to the sound and the kind of cultural attitude that goes with that sound, because it's a vocal affectation, which is an amalgamation of pitch and affectation and sort of flourish, really. So it's like, and again, I'm not like a professional, I'm just like a mad enthusiast. Yeah. So I collect this shit, So the sexy baby is pitch. So that's high, right? So already this is just pitch, and then uptalk and fry. So it's like you're uptalking and you're also frying. And so it's just like this place, like right in the middle. You don't even have to use the word like or anything like that, but it's, it's all that stuff. And it's the cocktail of all those things, really, that I would, from my humble point of view, would call, as a genuine, passionate, vocal obsessor, I would call that the sexy baby voice. And that is what I coined for my film In a World, which was, yeah.
Were you flattered then when you heard this lyric?
Well, I'll be completely honest with you. My assistant Lucy came in before this and said, I just want to flag this for you that there is a lyric in the Taylor Swift new song that says "sexy baby," and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she was like, I just in case, she is like a megastar, and it just might get to be into a cultural conversation. I was like, look, it is what it is. My daughter loves Taylor Swift. I couldn't be more flattered.
Yeah.
If that's maybe it's like, finally hit, I know I've seen it in articles too, where I've been referenced a lot, in kind of the vocal fry, the phenomenon, because I used to be, have a real bone to pick with it. It's a feminist discussion. And in the book, Malcolm Gladwell and I get into a very serious conversation about the sexy baby sound. And, it's something, for me, I always looked at it as like a trend, that kind of got out of hand and started to infect, a generation of women, where I was like, well, those women then became 40-year-old women. I'm like, why are they still sounding like that? It's like, so, at first, when I was writing the book, Malcolm said, why are you skirting around the fact that you have some judgment that you have to kind of work through, and that you got to be raw and honest about it? And I was like, God damn it. Because I was like, hey, to each to their own. And then he was like, look, it's okay. It's part of the conversation. And
Let's
frankly,
dive
it's
in.
what's most interesting about it. And so he interviews me and really kind of skewers me on it. So it's fun.
Like, I love I love that you're so passionate about voices. I love anyone who gets super passionate about something. And so it's just refreshing to hear you talk about it, because I think oftentimes people try to bury those interests down if they're a little left of center. Do you know what I mean? And so I always love when somebody's like just super into a topic. So I want to say thank you. The second thing I want to say is I'm a big reality TV watcher. And in terms of the sexy baby thing, I was watching a show called Winter House on Bravo. And I noticed it's happening with a couple on there. It was a man and a woman, and they get into the sexy voice when they're together. They're newly dating. And it's like they're both doing this baby voice thing. And Craig and Paige, for listeners, is who I'm talking about. Sometimes they get together and there's like a camera on them and they don't know the camera's on them and they're kind of flirting with each other, but in these baby voices. And what do you make of couples doing it together? Or have you learned anything about why that happens? Or what do you think of that?
Well, it's really interesting. In the audiobook, I talked to Emily Morse, Dr. Emily Morse, that podcast, Sex with Emily. Because I wanted to talk about the sexuality and the kind of like attraction reaction linked to the sexy baby voice, which is like, is that because, I ask a lot of people on the street too. I'm like, what sound do you think is sexy when you think of a woman's sexy voice? Like, who is it to you? And, it would be like Kim Kardashian to Jennifer Aniston, it would be a multitude of different sounds that, just speaking voice. And I was like, okay, so that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, Kim Kardashian is sexy, she's sexy, right. And she has fry, she's got a classic, kind of the quintessential, vocal fry. And when I think of couples doing it, that's unusual because usually it is something a female or someone who identifies as female takes on. It's usually that kind of a quality. So seeing a couple do it would be kind of extraordinarily entertaining.
It's fun to watch. Yeah.
I mean, I think that, I talked to Emily and Morris about it and I was like, because she actually has a bit of fry in her voice too. She has an amazing voice. And she has a little bit of that too. And she's very sexy. And so I'm like, gosh, is that interesting? There's something croaky about it. And croak means tired, and then tired means I've been up all night fucking. Maybe I don't know. Right. It's like this is the think tank on it. So it's like it's bedroom voice. Like even if you think about, people who have had the unfortunate crime against them with stolen property in a sex tape, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of those people, like when you think of the sex tape voice, unfortunately, those crime events do expose people's bedroom voice, and that voice has the sexual feminine gender role kind of blitz, right? Because they're like showing up for sex time or whatever, and even in porn and things like that, it's like there's a lot of gendered expression, which is like kind of fucked up. And then also because we're all evolving, we're like, I don't know if we want to all be gendered in the bedroom. Like, why can't we fuck around with our feminine and our masculine, and still be turned on? So it's interesting from a sexual, preference point of view too. Yeah.
It's so fascinating. I want to talk about some of the people that are involved in this project. I think one of the people is Drew Barrymore. I just interviewed her last week, and she has such a memorable voice. And I was just editing that interview, and I was hating my voice in it because I felt like I adapted some of her vocal things. But talk to me about memorable voices and who's involved in this project?
Yes. So yeah, the book is filled with all kinds of iconic voices. So it was really important to me to, pepper through, the audiobook experience with voices that we really know. And why are they so iconic? Like Jeff Goldblum, who, gosh, he's just a roller coaster of sounds through every sentence. And then, yes, Drew Barrymore, who, you can even see the shape of her face when you hear her voice. You know, we talked about it, how she does speak from one side of her mouth, which then rolls into the sound a bit. It affects it. And, you know, she was really open and honest and generous with kind of dissecting it with us. And then, Kunal Nair, who, you know, again, you know, on Big Bang Theory, everyone thought, oh, is that really his accent? But it is. And then that his born accent and his sort of relationship with it and style shifting and code shifting. I mean, even, you know, Pam Grier is in the book, and she's sort of very honest about her loss of voice after trauma. There's Susie Essman, you know, who, what the fuck, Jared? You know, like,
I love her voice.
The best. Yeah. Right. So she's terrific in it. And I adore her voice so much. And Tracy Ullman, who is just like a wonderful shapeshifter in the vocal arena. So it's really, it's quite special and truly bouncy and fun and wild and silly. And there's a bit of how-to in there. And sure, we get serious and we talk about the things that you're like, gosh, is this a feminist issue? Or is this like a race issue? You know, we get into all of it. And I say we, but I mean me. Yeah. But it is the collection of contributors as well.
This might be too broad of a question. Maybe in terms of the animated world, you also do a lot of animated voiceover work, Harley Quinn and all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's the bread and butter for me.
Tell me, what animated vocal performances do you think are some of the best or the most memorable throughout time? Is that too broad?
No, it's not too broad, because one of my contributors in the book is Eric Bauza, and he is
Daffy Duck. Was he Daffy?
He does all of them.
Yeah,
he does like Daffy Duck. He does like Marvin the Martian. I mean, he can do anything. And in the book, he has, you know, sometimes it's like a wild animal. If you let him loose, all of a sudden he's just like, what's up? I mean, you know, he's like doing all at the same time, and he does all the Looney Tunes and a multitude of other characters. So I would say he's quite expert when it comes to vocal dexterity. And he really, I mean, he could do Bart Simpson in a heartbeat. You know, he tells the story about, I was like, how does this all fucking start? And he said that he would do announcements at his high school, you know, and it would be like, you know, you'd have the mic to the whole fucking
just play around.
Yeah. And so he would just start, and it made the announcements far better if, like, you know, Marge Simpson is doing it, or, you know, Daffy or whatever. So, he started doing it like that.
I have such a respect for animated voiceover actors, and I get disappointed sometimes when they do movies. It was just announced the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Chris Pratt took a lot of heat because he's voicing Mario. And I sometimes feel like there's such a wealth of really talented voiceover artists in the animated world that don't always get the opportunity to shine when these projects go to bigger screen. And not to say that I don't think we've even really heard Chris as Mario, but I'm not happy.
You are livid.
I just think I'm also Italian, so I have a bone to pick. I mean, anyone Italian would have been better. Let's get Joy Behar in there. She could have gotten in the booth.
Certo. Well, I would say this. I think that, you know, voiceover artistry is definitely a rarefied, specific set of tools that an actor has. And I have great respect for the voiceover artist. You know, in the film, In a World, you know, I have a great homage to Don LaFontaine, who is the original guy who coined, actually, he wrote it and also performed In a World. And wow. I mean, voice of God, this guy.
Yeah.
And he passed away, but he was absolutely legendary. And I still adore him and all the voiceover greats that I now am part of I'm part of the community. And I mean, I made a film about them. So now I have,
you're there.
Like, I'm in there. And they definitely, you know, will put Don LaFontaine on a high pedestal.
I worked with, when I lived in Cleveland, actually, I worked with this guy, L, who was the voice of You've Got Mail back in the day. He was the You've Got Mail. Wow. He was a camera guy in Cleveland, and he just sort of got this gig. And I remember him telling me, and I hope I'm getting this right, but he didn't get paid much for the You've Got Mail. But then when they did the You've Got Pictures and they did a couple other ones, that's when he really got a paycheck. But he just sort of accidentally got this gig.
Mail.
Yeah, it
You've got
became
mail.
this thing that everybody knew. And of course, they made this movie, and it's my all-time favorite movie, like You've Got Mail. But he, I sort of fell into this and became this most memorable thing. And that wasn't his main gig or anything. He just sort of fell into this thing.
I know. And I think that's amazing. I mean, people who just fall into it. Sometimes people, it's like you're on the subway and you're like, that guy has
Great
the voice of a generation. Yeah. Or like, you're waiting online at the doctor's office and there's some woman who's just like, hey, come on in, and you're just like, wow, are you Lauren Bacall?
I keep wanting someone to just hire me to play like some gay pelican or something, or I'm in a cartoon. I just come in, I'm like, hey girl. And then you float out of the way.
That's it. God.
I mean, I would like more than that, but
why don't you write it?
I'm working.
Why don't you write the, Okay. I was like the gay pelican. I love that. I would watch that in a heartbeat.
I haven't written a pelican thing, but wait. Okay. So I mentioned You've Got Mail, and you're in one of my favorite movies. It's Complicated, written, directed by Nancy Meyers, who's on my shirt right now. You were also in her daughter's movie Home Again. Tell me something. I'm trying to think of like a good question for one of these because I love them so much. Wait, do you have something? I mean, I can give you an anecdote, which is fun. Please. I think if you love Nancy Meyers.
So when I got cast in It's Complicated, I mean, I'm small potatoes compared to the heavy hitters that are in the movie. And my character, Agnes, is very high status, in terms of kind of characterization, right? And so she's like the new wife. She's the one who should have confidence. Of course, I'm on the arm of Alec Baldwin, and I'm the new wife to the ex-wife, Meryl Streep. And she's with Steve Martin. So when the first scene that we had to shoot was that last scene that I have where she's high on marijuana. Yeah.
And Steve Martin's in that one too. So it's,
they're both high and having a grand old time. And I'm supposed to be Miss like, go have a cry about it kind of like vibes. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, I can't even pinch myself. I'm so excited. And it's the first time I'm on set with Meryl. Of course, I got my shit together. But the point is, initially, boy, was I Dork City, USA. And so I do, she's like, hey, let's do a words rehearsal. Let's just like get it up on its feet and like see how it goes. And so we start riffing and I can't get my act together. I'm like very professional. Obviously, you could tell. I mean, you hear the deepness in my voice. I'm a very professional actor. I always know my words, but I literally was just watching Meryl and watching her work up close, like close to my nose. And Nancy pulled me aside and she was like, and I was like, yeah. And she was like, you need to get your shit together.
I love that.
And I was like, she was like, you need to get it together. And I was like, she was really sweet, but she was like,
yeah,
you're not, I hired you and pull it together and do the acting that I hired you to do. Oh, and I was like, yes, aye, Captain, coming in hot. And then,
I mean, how cool is it though? To me, Nancy Meyers movies are the most rewatchable. I think, I don't know, nowadays everything is superhero oriented. And I know those fan bases like to watch those movies over and over again. But with something like It's Complicated or Something's Gotta Give or The Intern or all these movies, they're so rewatchable and so good. And they'll live on forever. I mean, It's Complicated will be forever.
I know. I think romantic comedies really do have that market, right? That kind of like, oh, I don't feel it. I just want to like cozy up and watch, and then it's like insert awesome romantic comedy with a great story structure here, And I mean, even Man Up was another romantic comedy. And then No Strings Attached. I mean, all these movies I have still as if they just came out, people reaching out and being like, oh my God, I loved you. And, I mean, even What Happens in Vegas, to this day, I'm at like, TSA going through the checkpoint and someone will be like, you know why? And I'm like, they're like, can you do it? And I'm like, you know why, and everyone's like, and it's still there.
Yeah.
And it's
And
just funny that
like, I hope you take this in the spirit it's given, but you always had the role that I watched. And like, it was you and Catherine Hahn. Like, those were the roles I'm watching. Like, that's the fun role. You get to have the fun lines and be
oh my
weird and
God.
wacky. And that's always,
I love it.
yeah.
Oh, I've always loved it. It's the brunette. It's the brunette role.
Yeah. And it's like the Judy Greer, Bonnie Hunt, you're drinking Waterloo. And I just have to say, Waterloo is so much better than LaCroix. And I've said that a million times on the show, but people need to know it's 1,000 times better. And Home Again too. You were in Home Again, which is Nancy's daughter Hallie's movie. And I think Home Again is very underrated. It was sort of a came and went, but people like myself love it.
I think, it was interesting. The thing for me in Home Again was Nancy called me and she was like, hey, can you come and like play a bitch again? It's like, you are the only person in all of Hollywood that sees me this way. I was like, I'm like usually thought of as like menschy kind of goofball, and you see me as sexy and like dangerous, and I love it because who do you think I am? Because she was like, no, you are so sexy and dangerous. Just like, I love it because everyone else is like, I'm kind of like, bumbling and
I have a fantasy of going to Nancy Meyers' dinner party. Like, that's the dream.
Well, let me tell you, her house is remarkable. You would lose it. I can imagine. It's just, there's sumptuous fabrics everywhere.
I've tried to get her on this show. She follows me on Instagram, and I'm so scared that she's going to unfollow me at some point, but I love her. And I know she's doing a new Netflix movie, so I'm excited that she's working again because the world needs her and Hallie.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I also feel like she should probably call me to play a bitch because it's been a bit.
Yeah. Okay. I know I have to let you go. What's next for you? You directed In a World, which was so good. I encourage everyone to go check it out. You also directed a couple episodes of Pam and Tommy, which I thought was fantastic.
I also directed I Do Until I Don't, which is a romantic sort of dramedy about marriage. And that's also on Hulu. So you have 2 features on Hulu. And then, by the way, also Hulu, Pam and Tommy. A lot of Hulu.
I loved Pam and Tommy. Were you guys disappointed? Because Pam sort of like came out and said she wasn't happy with it, right?
Listen, I took every ounce of my creative juices on that with such love and care and thoughtful energy into that, into the directing of every scene. And Lily and I both were aligned
She was so good.
She was incredible. But also, there is this sense of, does it bum me out? Of course, it was disappointing and heartbreaking to think that from the outside point of view that we would ever try to further exploit. It was, if you see the show, you understand that it is a crime story, and that it takes these incredible people who were so often toyed with as cartoon characters and humanizes them as people who were wronged. And thus, especially in the episodes that I took on, this was a human experience of a woman who was exploited and taken advantage of in the most intimate way. And as a person who has had public or had private images stolen from my own iCloud, nude images, and both just plastered on the internet, I understand the vulnerability and the feeling, and it pisses me off and it makes me furious and violated. And so I felt like I had a bone to pick. So when I was asked to do it, I was like, yeah, as long as I can make it again, I can take my episodes and make sure that it is a deeply feminist point of view when it comes to, like, no one is protecting me in this situation. I am the victim here, not like feel sorry for me, but just fucking know it.
Understand it.
Yeah. Make no mistake. It's different for the men.
Yeah. What a pleasure. So you're directing something new. Are you directing something new?
So right now I'm acting in 2 projects that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So I have 2 acting projects that are going to be coming down the pike. And I have directing projects that also are coming down the pike that I cannot wait to share with you one day.
Well, I'm really such a huge fan. So I just want to thank you for taking the time. I have 2 more quick questions that I ask all of my guests before I let you go. The first is your favorite Mariah Carey song. And also, if you were choosing for People Magazine Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose?
Oh my God, these are just, it's a lot. Hang on. Let me, you've done,
please take your
can
time.
Oh my God, because there is one song. I have one Mariah Carey that song that popped in, but there's one that I love the most. So hang on a second.
Okay,
just stay right here. Stay right here. Don't go anywhere. Because there's one I really, I'm like very serious.
I'm just thrilled you're not going to say the Christmas song because a lot of my guests say the Christmas song.
No, I'm not into Christmas carols. I'm sorry.
That's a wrap on us because I also like Christmas carols, but
it's fine. It's fine. We can have differences. Honey, this is part of, like, you don't want friends that are all the same. It's the version of fantasy where there's
with
like
ODB.
Yeah.
With ODB, a classic. I mean, come on, takes you right back to the 90s.
I just can't even handle that.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
It's so
my
good.
Shining star.
York in the house. That video is so good. Yeah.
Sexiest Man Alive. I would say Lee Pace.
Yeah, 6'5" Lee Pace. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he's tall.
And then the other guy, I think they're both, it's funny. Okay. Lee Pace or motherfucker.
Wait, who is to you the sexiest male voice?
The sexiest male voice?
Yeah, like who do you hear and you're like, wow, that person's I'm trying to think of who I would think that is, but I can't.
Oh my God. You know what? You're turning the tables on me. I don't even know. I mean, it has to be real deep.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a real deep voice for me. Because of course I'm already deep. So I need someone even deeper. But wait, there's another gentleman. Oh, Pedro Pascal. Is that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Super sexy. Yeah.
Super sexy.
Yeah.
So, anyway, those 2 gentlemen, because I think they appeal to everyone. And I like that.
I just saw The Ticket to Paradise yesterday with Jules and George Clooney, and every male in that was sexy. So I just want to encourage everyone to see it. That's all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
George, especially too. George, I'm like, how is he aging like that? He's just,
I know.
It's disgusting.
He has a beautiful voice. He has a beautiful voice.
Yeah. It's kind of rascally. And Julia Roberts' laugh, talk about instant serotonin when you hear that laugh.
Oh, I love her. I love her.
What a pleasure. Everyone's going to check out your audiobook. It's called Inside Voice, My Obsession with How We Sound. It's from Pushkin Industries. Check it out. It's so good. Watch In a World. Watch all your stuff on Hulu. You're the best. I love you so much. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Nanny. Thank you.
Bye.